Hi, this is Paul Tyler, and welcome to another episode of the Reimagine podcast. Laura, good morning.
Great to be here. Yes, good morning. And I'm excited for our episode today. I'm excited for every episode, but we have a friend who's been with us most recently in our Reimagining Retirement Forums. So if you've been listening, which I hope everybody has, you know that we put on a series of forums this past November and December, and Farron joined us on those. So I won't jump too much into that right now, but we're excited to have him here today on a few different angles. But before we go into that, I'd like to just introduce Farron Blanc, CEO of Gerry. And Farron, why don't you kick off by telling us a little bit about yourself? How did you end up here, and how did you start your company?
Yeah, no, thanks, Laura and Paul. Serial entrepreneur. Started my first business when I was a teenager, and then most recently was working at a reinsurance company, which is where I met Paul. Was helping start innovation there, working with our carrier partners, as well as trying to bring new businesses. So both backing entrepreneurs that are looking at insurance, life insurance, as well as our carrier partners. And kind of the genesis of why I decided to start Gerry is so on the professional side, a lot of our carrier partners, and this was years ago, would just say, look, like long-term care and the aging economy is the biggest opportunity that's not really being met. Obviously pension funds are largely insolvent, or public pension funds are largely insolvent. People are living longer, so there's a need. And then the current offerings in the market, which we can probably talk about later, don't really fit the need. And then on the personal side, my father, he had Alzheimer's dementia. And so going through that process is just it's super stressful, super confusing, and it created a lot of chances for financial ruin for my family, for my mother, as we were trying to navigate finding home health aides, support workers, finding memory care communities, adult daycares, like all of these things that, you have to go through. It's super stressful, super confusing. So kind of seeing that and living that on the personal side, as well as kind of the market or professional background, really convinced me to really dig deep and think about how we can, if there is an opportunity and can we start something, and fast forwarding, and now we have Gerry, where we're blessed to be backed by great investors and capital partners, and we created a small team. And what we're doing is we're helping seniors navigate all the complexities around health and wealth. We do that through a membership subscription program, where our goal is basically to save them time, money, or stress when they're thinking through essential services, their estate planning needs, as well as their health and plans of care, and so yeah, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, well, hey, listen, it's great to have you on here, and first of all, thanks for being on this forum, being a participant on our panel with us. It was great to have you on here, and just say, listen, I've enjoyed working with you in how many different capacities. Let's see, I've been in 2 different companies. You and I actually chased an incredibly interesting, fascinating deal, right? With a large fitness company. I think we were way out there. I think, there was that opportunity was a big one. You supported me on a sort of a brief startup I did, which was I appreciate that. And then we've had a chance to collaborate with you on the reinsurance side, as well as now your company. So let's we've just done a partnership. I'll kind of tease the listeners. We'll talk as we go about partnership. We have a pilot going right now with your company, but. So Farron, let's talk a little bit more about the problem. I think a lot of people can identify with what you're describing. I went through the same thing. My father passed away from ALS. Now I knew that was happening for about 18 months. And unfortunately, that's kind of one of these horrible things where clock starts ticking, and unfortunately, doctors, the averages tend to be right at this moment. My mother, so I knew it, but there was a short period of time. My mother suffered from dementia. Probably, it's interesting. I actually sort of figured this out when I got a call from the police. you can't make some of these things up in terms of when and how you find this out. But it probably, she suffered from dementia for probably 8 years, 9 years. It was a long, long process. And I'll tell you, that was an ordeal, and it was an ordeal from a distance, because I was on the East Coast. She was out in the West, stubborn, wouldn't move, had to deal with all the psychology of somebody resisting diagnoses, et cetera. How different am I from some of the people you're working with, or how different is my mother?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's tragic, but a lot of our members, are going through the same thing, so I was just on a call yesterday, with one of our care concierges, and they were chatting through how, the the mother went through a similar issue with his grandmother, 20 years ago, and kind of made the promise to say, oh no, yeah, like that was very difficult, like super stressful. The burden of caring for, his grandmother fell on his mother. And then so he brought up, okay, look, like, you know what, like, let's come up with a plan. Let's come up with a plan, whether it's living at home, an independent living community, what do you really want to do? And the mother just won't engage, just because these things are so difficult, right? And it really reinverts a lot of the, traditional structures, like family structures, like parent child, if there's siblings involved, that it brings up all this like guilt, remorse, grief, on top of the financial aspects, because the stuff, as Paul, is not cheap at all. It's very, very expensive and cost prohibitive for many, many people if they don't have a plan in place. So unfortunately, it's not tragic. And I mean, even my own experience, my father, we thought he was kind of just like getting slowing down. And really the light bulb moment was he took one of our cars, or took my car, and just drove it 8 hours until it ran out of gas, and I was living in St. Louis at the time. I was back in Toronto to catch an international flight to Korea the next day, when my mom just kind of texted me saying, hey, look, like, your dad's gone. I go back, I have to change my flight to Korea, obviously, but then luckily he had his cell phone with him. And so we knew the direction he was traveling. The police were able to ping it. So I just started driving east, like that night at like midnight. End up staying at a friend's place. Like she left the door unlocked because I got in until Montreal at like 4 a.m. My mom flies the next morning in. The police found his car at an off ramp, brought him to a hospital just overnight. And then when we get to the hospital the next morning, just smiles like, hey, what are you guys doing here? And then that's like what really kicked off what do we do? Do we sell the house? Like, all of these things. Like, does my mom, who was, couple, a decade, 2 decades younger than my dad, like, does she retire, et cetera, and just like transition from being, a partner spouse to effectively a full-time caregiver, a part-time caregiver, and very terrible.
Now, the people who use your services, are they primarily the caretakers who at least start the process and or is your client really primarily people who are the category you described, where I recognize these issues, I need help?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I'd say it's about 50-50 actually. So we classify it broadly into 2 categories, like the caregivers. So adult children, caring for people who, might be in their 70s, 80s, 90s. Those people are predominantly, middle-aged, so 40 and up. And then another big swath of our population is what we call independent seniors. So we aren't serving people that have pretty severe cognitive impairments, just because, that's something that we have to get to, but we have to be focused, but we are serving independent seniors who are living alone, but, need help and assistance or just advice. Because I mean, the challenge is whenever you're confronting something, you're doing it for the first time, right? Like in a do-it-yourself manner. Whereas what we're doing with digital tools, content, and then our care concierges, who are all, social workers, have like 10 plus years experience in, senior care or working at a care agency, they just like have been there, done that, know some of the templates and the hacks, if you will, that can help come up with a better plan and then save you time, money or stress as you go through it.
How has the adoption been? So it sounds like you have a mix of ages of individuals using the platform, using the product. What does that look like? What has that conversation been like?
Yeah. So, I mean, what we do is we try to design our product. So we partner a lot with distributors, so insurance distributors, financial advisors. So I think it's a complementary solution. So a lot of them, you know, a lot of their customers have already taken the first step in terms of like creating a protection plan or financial protection plan. And then we think of it as we're a concierge senior care company that can help fill in the gaps, and be there day in, day out, week in, week out. And so what we do though is we're very proactive in engaging with our clients, SMS, email, voice, video, and then we have weekly explainer topics, that help them dive deep into complex topics like getting your will across the line or updating it, or arranging grocery delivery, or finding the best price for pharmaceuticals. And so we use those to really just like break it down and simplify a lot of the knowledge and make it very, very accessible, for whether it's the caregiver or an independent senior or independent elder.
Well, and the costs are, you've mentioned this a couple of times. People don't understand how much what the price is. Like, for instance, okay, my mother was at a semi-assisted living center in Salt Lake. Now, it was much cheaper to have her living in our house paid off, and I had to intercept and do all our banking. But then to move her to the semi-assisted living center, okay, so now her monthly expenses pretty much doubled right there. Yeah. Now to go to the memory canal, the numbers were, I think, this sounds, especially on the East Coast, sounds ridiculous. Or it was like $2,000 a month. You get a meal. You have to get down the elevator, get to the meals. Mealtime was amazing. It was like everyone was rushing at the door with their walkers and stuff. But that's great if you can get down the elevator, right? So, and nobody's going to check on you. So you got, I had to create my own sort of network of people to show up and make sure, was she on the floor or not? Now, go to full memory care. Wow. I mean, that was like, I found a cheap one, and it was $4,000 a month. That's in Utah. Now, if I'd taken her out to New York, it would have been 12. How much now? I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, when you look at the expenses, what are the typical costs associated, do you see, caring for some of these seniors? Like, and how does it escalate as you're going through this process?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, it can start, it depends on, again, the severity, right? And your needs, and then your geography. But let's talk national averages, right? So the national averages for a home health worker, who can do some light assistance, so if, your loved one, needs light cooking, cleaning, grocery work, etc., but from someone who's like trained at an agency who can also monitor, or assist with your activities of daily living, like dressing, grooming, bathing, transporting, meaning like getting up and out of chairs, from the kitchen table to the sofa. That would typically cost about like $15 to $17 an hour out of pocket traditionally. But then the challenge is most agencies or aid workers require minimum hours, right? So you can't really just find someone for an hour, right? Or 15 minutes every single day. And so on average nationally, that will be about $4,000 a month. Moving into an independent living or an assisted living nationally will probably cost around like $3,000, $4,000 a month. That covers room and board and meals, but to your point, that's kind of it. If you do need any other type of assistance, someone to assist, getting up out of a bed, walking, assisting with like bathing or grooming or eating, like assistance with food. Yeah, that can get up there. And yeah, you're right. Memory care could typically cost $10,000 to $15,000 a month, which, you think about it, that's more than half the country makes, in terms of gross income. Right.
So like if I, if you've been there, then, is your primary value at this point to help me navigate and actually vet these people, or is it to help me actually manage the cost, or is it both?
Yeah, it's both. So I think it's understanding the plan, right? So it's like understanding the care plan, realizing that it's not a sprint. I think a lot of people think that it's like, okay, I just got to do this and then get back to it. It's like, no, typically this is like, at a minimum a 24-month journey, if you're at these stages, right? If you're just, not at those stages, coming up with a smart financial plan, particularly if people, have financial products, whether it's they own their own house or have, a guaranteed income plan, there's ways that you can really, really, be smart about how you want to fund this and minimize, the burden to others, right? Or not jeopardize your own financial independence if you are, taking care of a loved one. So that's kind of number one, coming up with a plan. The second thing that I think we do is, we curate using data. So we have data on 40,000 care providers. So variables such as, proximity to houses of worship, whether they're pet friendly, reviews as a minimum, the number of government assistance, whether that's like Veterans Affairs or Medicaid, et cetera. So there's all that data that we're then able to like personalize and use, and evaluate, and then curate those matches. And then the third, for some partners in a few geographies, we're able to arrange pretty significant discounts, just by being a smart advocate or broker on behalf of the family, as well as by being able to pool, negotiation. So it's like wholesale pricing in effect. And then we pass on, a large chunk of those savings, a significant chunk of those savings onto the loved one, the family. So they're saving 10, 15% compared to the $3,600 monthly average that I mentioned at an assisted living community, or, $4,000 a month for 20 hours a week of a home health aide.
Yeah, well, obviously, I think there's a big opportunity here for financial institutions to work with you. In fact, so much so we've actually got a partnership, a pilot partnership. Ryan, do you want to talk about what we're doing? We've been experimenting with.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, so NASA is an amazing. Everything you guys are doing, from podcast to innovation, has been fantastic. And then the team here is, the project we're working on, or the pilot, is really, kind of what I mentioned, right? So it's like, how do you pay for senior care and remain financially independent? Can we create some content and just be valuable, just educating people around the awareness of what are the four main methods, to be able to pay for senior care, just coming up with a plan. And then if they do want additional information, either on, the financial side, they can contact a NASA representative, or on the care planning side, they can contact a Gerry representative. And so we're doing that through social media. Early days still, but it's been exciting, to work on the project and just like think through how we can develop collateral and raise awareness around these needs,
So you mentioned something earlier that caught my ear. So talking about being a smart advocate. In my family's situation, dealing with, dementia and Alzheimer's, and two different individuals, both situations were different. One was the live-in care situation where you're just hoping that, they're helped out of their bed that day and they're helped through the facility physically, et cetera. And the other one was a live-at-home situation where the individual had caretakers come to her and work with her throughout the process. It's an interesting mix. Obviously, every individual is different. And as these things progress, there's certain things that the ones who are being cared for either want or do not want, and they generally let their thoughts be known. And that can be a tough relationship. But kind of focusing on the relationship aspect, especially for, say, the adult children who are working with the care providers, how do you build trust in this situation? So it's one thing to be able to sit across the table from an individual and get to see them and speak with them and kind of feel the trust in that sense. But how do you do it on a digital platform? And what does that conversation look like?
Yeah, so we have licensed social workers, well, our employees, who engage frequently, with the family, in whatever method they want, right? Whether it's text messaging, phone calls, Facebook video calls, et cetera, or Zoom hangouts. And by just being there, being present and understanding, and then frankly, having gone through it and being an empathetic listener, you're able to really ascertain at the highest level what's the most important and what's also realistic, right? So, I mean, depending on someone's situation, everyone I think would want to age at home, like no one ever really wants to move into a community. But I think sometimes it really comes down to, okay, what's the support network, both the level of care that's required, and then also what are the financial means, because although, the headline cost of $4,000 a month is expensive, if you actually think about it, if the senior is still renting an apartment, national rent is $1,000, plus you have maintenance costs, plus you have, utilities, electrical, plus food, so you quickly kind of reach that parity, particularly if it's an independent living of about $2,000 a month, relatively quickly in the geography. So coming up with that plan of care, building that trust, and just being there to be authentic and listen to people and follow up on actions. And again, we just think of it as, irrespective of the solution or the endpoint, if we can somehow meaningfully keep it very simple, jargon free, and save our users, our members, either time, money, or stress as they're navigating or thinking through these instincts, these situations, that goes a long way in building the trust and being a part of their team. We charge a membership fee, so we're 100% aligned with just making sure that they can, get the best fee, irrespective of what decisions they're choosing.
That's great. And
Go ahead.
I was going to say, have you seen an impact with COVID? So you talk a lot about being there, having conversations, being that trusted, respected member in this journey. How has COVID impacted what you're seeing?
Yeah. No, I think it's heightened it, it's heightened the social isolation, the emotional cognitive well-being of a lot of our members is suffering. We're seeing a spike in terms of the amount of depression, and isolation that our members, our independent seniors, are going through. And yeah, so I mean, yeah, the COVID is very scary. A lot of it is very challenging, particularly for our users. And then a bunch of them have been impacted by job losses, having their social networks meaning going to church, being upended. And so, yeah, it's difficult. It's really, really difficult. I mean, we've had some of our users, our members, talk about suicide, and stuff like that, and really heavy stuff, that people are just going through a whole world of pain, and are trying to come up with coping mechanisms. So, we're always grateful that our mission is there to just try to have some positive impact, positive impact on the lives of our members, and however we can try to do that, that's what we're fiercely, trying to think through what are great ways to build delightful experiences, to make it easier to reach customers, or easier to serve, our members.
Yeah, loneliness is a big theme I've heard multiple times. What's been the biggest aha in sort of addressing that with clients?
Yeah, I think definitely listening, right, and being there frequently, and increasing the touch points, whether that's through Facebook, messenger conversations, or on proprietary chat platforms or SMS, but we've consciously decided to not build apps, and it's a lot more work on our side, but the way to interact with our platform, you aren't required, logins or passwords, right? Because that just increases the friction, and so we want to be as accessible to our users as possible. And then once you're accessible, and then if you're authentic, that's where the trust can come up, and then it's really just diagnosing, and relying a lot on our experts, like our care concierges who have 10 years experience in senior care to kind of assess, in the case of suicide, is it legitimate and real, in terms of, because even when you think through suicide, you have to have the the motivation, the means, and the method to be serious. And so really trying to ascertain, is it a cry for help and further engagement, or is it really serious, and triaging that, right? And so we have training around that, and then resources and collateral that we can deploy, but just being there to listen and try to ascertain what it is, and just, being a support, and whether that's, helping them join a book club, or find new activities, to just like cope and keep things in perspective.
I guess, how long does it take to build trust? Is it
Yeah.
time, or is it a number of engagements? I mean, what's the formula?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I would say it's like, we don't have the data yet to be able to say, oh, this is the formula, like do this, like send, send flowers when this happens. Yeah, exactly. Or have them engage with some tools. We are tracking that. And I think, and it varies by users, to be quite honest, right? So like all of our users are so unique, like senior as a market kind of doesn't really mean anything. It's not even age related as well, and it's tangentially correlated to wealth. But some of our older users, have very different needs than some of our younger users, but the younger users need more support, or more end caregiving provisions, so finding home health aides or emotional cognitive support, whereas some of our older users just, want at-home exercise plans, and checkups, and we're able to support that. And so, yeah, I think it's a two-way street, so we're not just there trying to like suck up information, from our users. So we encourage all of our care concierges to share their life too. Like it's kind of back and forth. Like it is a relationship. Like, what did you do this weekend? This is what I did, I'm getting married, etc. And just like kind of unlocking that, what we call that aha moment, where it's like, it's a true relationship. Whether that takes sometimes, like I'd say, you get into this like reliably good, like comfortable relationship within the first 30 days. And that's why also we structured our programs to have a 30-day money back guarantee. So, if in the first 30 days, it's not really working a great fit, we'll refund all of your money.
So you mentioned text messaging, FaceTime, a lot of ways to connect with people. We spent time on the forum you were on talking about meeting people where they are. Where are they today? Like, I know this is a moving target. Like, is it mainly phone? Mainly, what are those preferred methods?
Yeah, again, it doesn't. I would say they're everywhere that everyone else is. In the sense of email works just probably a bit less, like as a percentage point less than most other people in terms of let's call it the 30-year-old newsletter craze, that's kind of happening right now. That's,
true.
State of the art. Definitely, there's that. Text messaging works as well. Facebook is prevalent, but how to engage with people is kind of something to think through. And so, yeah, and then phone, phone works. People don't want to be like, robocalled or spammed to death, but a phone, like everyone we are engaging with has access to a smartphone, like an Android capable smartphone, that they're using to engage. How much they're able to have comfort in terms of, ordering deliveries on Amazon or, resetting passwords, et cetera, or doing online banking, et cetera, that's variable, but yeah, I would say through the phone, into the email / SMS / a Facebook app, is where people are.
Have you had conversations around, so thinking about my grandfather, he's mid 80s, he's on his cell phone, he's pretty high tech, better than some of my friends, but I know that he's also very cautious and he's very skeptical of, those robocalls or any kind of cyber things going on that are not in his favor. So how do you have that conversation, or how do you talk through that when you hit those walls?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess it's two things, right? So, if we're trying to solicit a new customer, I think it's very different from when they're already a subscriber, right? Mm-hmm. So when they're a subscriber, you're in like the circle of trust, right? Like one of our clients during like the Oregon wildfires, like made one of our concierges their next of kin, right? Or not next of kin, but like emergency notification or whatever. Like, even though I think she has like an adult son, I'm pretty sure, so it's like, we have to figure out.
That goes back to the relationship though, right? It's trust right there.
Yeah, so it's like, like our concierge is like the most stable or whatever person who would try to sort out what would happen to, her two dogs or something, and find them good homes. And so, yeah, when you're a member, like, it kind of disappears, like over time. And when we're onboarding new customers, yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Like it's operationally intensive to build that trust. We're doing that through partnerships, again, by partnering with, insurance distributors, et cetera, insurance carriers, manufacturers. There's already kind of that level of trust and brand recognition that we think can be a win-win, so the bar is obviously, yeah, much higher if it's, you see an ad on the radio or see an ad on TV or hear an ad on the radio, versus, coming vetted through, a partner that you already have a pre-existing relationship. And that's kind of the current tact that we're using.
Well, hey, this is terrific. Farron, thanks for your time. Now, so next question is, how can we help you? If people are listen to the show, are interested in partnering with you, and let me think about the partnerships I've heard. So other carriers like us looking to potentially connect with caretakers or people who actually need to plan their financial services. Sound like manufacturers, people who create age tech services. Is that the universe of partners you're looking for?
Yeah, and also I think the biggest area that we're having the most amount of interest in and impact with is independent distributors as well. So financial advisors, RIAs, have a bunch of conversations. We have a couple partnerships live already and more on the way, but that one is very interesting to us, because we think it's not just, a one-way relationship, but a lot of the times, particularly with financial advisors, our members will bring up questions like, hey, is this the right plan for me? We're able to kind of answer it, or when we're talking about annuities, right? They'd say, hey, what is an annuity? Oh, it's a guaranteed income plan. But if they actually want a quote, or if they actually want, what does this look like? That's where we're then able to say, hey, why don't we refer you back to, our friend Paul, who introduced us. So it's kind of a reciprocal relationship that way, as opposed to just a, transactional relationship, one way. And so, yeah, those are kind of the best conversations. And then in terms of reaching out, our website, www.meetgerry.com, has contact form where people can email me, Farron at meetgerry, so FARRON at meetgerry.com.
Great. Laura, anything else?
Yeah, it would be a shame to miss the opportunity. So for people who are either already have their own business or thinking about starting a business, what is one piece of advice you would provide to an entrepreneur today?
Yeah. So what stage, I guess, is the question, like idea stage, I mean, sorry, not to make it, not to be difficult. I would say, okay, it depends, right? So it's like everyone has a great idea. And even what we find is ideas do not translate into reality, right? So just get started, right? Like start collecting data, start moving, start prototyping, start, whatever you can do. If it's a digital product, you don't need to find an engineer quota. There's a bunch of low code or no code solutions that can quickly assess whether, directionally your idea makes sense, so just get started, start collecting data directionally, right? That's the one advice. Obviously it depends based on skill set, what you're looking at, but always a big fan of just one of our core values is progress, not perfection. And then the other one is seek data. So I always kind of think of that as just make some progress and then just seek more and more data to refine and iterate your results.
That's great.
I like that. Progress, not perfection. All right. Well, Farron, thanks for your time. Laura, another good discussion. And listen, thanks, Farron. Look forward to involving more in incubator and also as a partner. See what we can do down the road as these problems just become bigger for people.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thanks, Laura.
Hey, thanks.
It's great.
Great. Tune again next week for another episode of the Reimagine podcast.